Here we are on a Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. Jacked Up is live across the WTOV9 digital platforms. Yours truly, Jack Hillgrove, happy to be with you on this Tuesday night. A lot to get into this evening as we get set for the NFL schedule release. It's supposed to happen a week from today, according to reports. There were thoughts that it might have happened Thursday. A lot going on as far as that goes. The Pittsburgh Pirates seem to have found their footing offensively. We'll check in with what they've got going on tonight as well with game two with the Los Angeles Angels. Team that just got done beating up on the LA Angels. The Cleveland Guardians have had one heck of a start to their 2024 season. They are first place in the AL Central Division. And Najee Harris, as we shift back into the NFL, his fifth-year option was not picked up by the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, meaning that he will be a free agent following this season. We'll react to that a little bit as well, but we'll begin with baseball, and we will begin with what seems to be the biggest storyline of the Pittsburgh Pirates right now, and that is its top prospect, Paul Skenes. A lot of speculation, a lot of debate the last 24 to 48 hours, especially since this weekend. And we'll talk about why if you missed it, but a lot of hubbubaloo, if you will, that this guy is going to be pitching in PNC Park this weekend. As a reminder, if you have any questions or comments as far as we go here tonight, feel free to leave them on the stream. We'll talk about it, but we'll talk about Paul Skenes to start. Now, he did give up a home run this weekend in his last start with the Indianapolis Indians, the AAA affiliate of the Pirates. Okay, I mean, it's going to happen. The guy throws the ball very, very hard. And what happens when you connect on a ball that's thrown as hard as he can throw it, 102, 103, ball's going to go a very long way. I mean, the guy's going to give up home runs in his major league career. He's not Hercules. He's not, Nolan Ryan and, a Greek god combined. I mean, the guy is going to give up some runs and he's going to have some bad starts. But really, he's not had what I would call a bad start yet this season with the Indianapolis Indians. 7 of them at the AAA level this year. Paul Skenes has an ERA of 0.99, and it's just over 27 innings of work, 27 and a third, giving up 17 hits. He struck out 45 in 27 innings. That's a pretty darn good clip, especially when you look at how many guys he's walked. He's only walked 8 guys. So he's going to be legit. I've said that time and time again. Ron's coming in. Ron, you're frequent on the show. Appreciate you chiming back in. He was upset on a strike call the pitch before, so I don't count it. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. He kind of reminds me a lot like Jared Jones. And Ron, and if any other Pirate fans are watching, I want you to hold on with me here as we get into when this guy is going to be brought up. If I had to place a wager right now, he will be pitching inside PNC Park on Saturday. I believe the Cubs come to town this weekend. That is the series where he is, well, a lot of people have speculated he's going to come up. Yeah, the Cubs tomorrow, 12:35 against the Angels. It's the last game of the series, and then they start a 3-game set this weekend before they go on the road to face the Brewers. I think he starts Saturday, 4:05 at PNC Park against a divisional opponent, especially if they're able to rattle off a win tonight, maybe even a win tomorrow to sweep the Angels. That would be pretty darn cool if he's, the Pirates get some wins under their belt, kind of get back towards the Mendoza line, and then Paul Skenes gets, in the home ballpark, and that would make for a pretty darn cool atmosphere. I think it's going to happen this weekend. I really do. Jason Mackey of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette used to be on the Pirates beat, now a columnist, but still has plenty of sources and still has a lot of, wherewithal around the Pirates beat. He thinks it's going to happen this weekend. He's very good at his job, and that's what I'm basing my opinion off of. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to necessarily be upset about it. I would much rather see right now. And you might call me crazy. You might say you're nuts. This guy's going to be the future of this Pirates rotation. He's going to be the catalyst. He's going to be the anchor. He's going to be the ace of the next Pirates team to win a playoff game. I truly believe that. I do. But I'm not going to be upset if they wait another month to call this guy up. A month and a day is June 8th. That's the Super 2 date. And if you're unfamiliar, if they wait to call up a prospect, if a major league team waits to call up a guy like Paul Skenes after that June 8th date, he earns an extra year of arbitration later on down the line in his contract. So, like, if this guy, blows the doors off of the league, and when they get to arbitration and in his arbitration hearings, they look at his numbers, they look what he does, and he says, okay, this is how much you're making. You get an extra year of that, or you avoid it for one more year until if he's brought up after June 8th. If he's brought up pre-June 8th, then, things could get a little bit sticky in that situation. So I'm all about keeping this guy in a Pirates uniform for as long as possible. I am all about this guy being a Pittsburgh Pirate for the better part of his career, because we saw it with Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was fantastic. Garrett Cole was a part of those playoff teams in 2013, 2014. Garrett Cole started game 5. They were one game away from the NLCS. Yeah, Ron, I just checked the score. They are down 5-0, top 6. I was out covering a softball game tonight. I know the start of the game got delayed, and I wasn't able to keep track as I was down in Wheeling covering softball. But to my point, Garrett Cole was Garrett Cole for the Pirates, and then it got to the point where they knew that they couldn't afford. They didn't want to pay him what a prime caliber starting pitcher like Garrett Cole earns, and they trade him to Houston, and they get some what return. I mean, Joe Musgrove was fine, but Michael Feliz was in that return as well. Trade stunk. But that's my point. I don't know under this ownership regime for the Pirates if Paul Skenes is going to be all right. You know what? The guy's 21, 22 years old. I think he's 22. In 2034, he'll be 32 years old and probably dead smack in the middle of his prime. Pirates fans out there right now, Ron, I know you've been in the comments. Hopefully you're still watching. I want you to answer this question, and any other Pirates fans out there that have been following this like I have and have been following the Pirates for, their conscious adult lives, their entire lives. Answer this question for me in the comments. Let's jump in a time machine and go to May 7th, 2034. Paul Skenes will be like 32 years old. Will he be a Pittsburgh Pirate? 10 years from today, will he be pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates? I say no. And I base that solely off of the fact that this ownership regime and players that have come up through the system get shipped out and get signed for bigger deals in bigger markets. I don't think Paul Skenes signs a contract extension like a guy like Mitch Keller did, or Brian Reynolds did, or Brian Hayes has, that keeps him in Pittsburgh long term. They're not going to be able to nickel and dime this guy. This guy's going to be making $30-40 million a year, maybe even more than that, as the inflation rises and players begin to make more money. He might be making $50-60 million a year. Jordan says, very doubtful. Yeah, I don't think he plays for the Pirates a decade from now. Dead smack in the middle of his prime. He'll be with the Yankees. He'll be with the Dodgers. He'll be with the Cubs, whoever. My point is, I want this guy under Pirate control for as long as possible, because you saw it last year with the Diamondbacks with a young roster. They were able to win 84 games and make it to the World Series. If the Pirates can get the right people in here to make those decisions, I'm not saying they have them right now, starting to question that with this upper management for Pittsburgh. But if they can get the right people into this organization to bring those young players in, and if they can get a good nucleus of guys cooking, they could win 85 games and squirt their way into the World Series like the Diamondbacks did. Absolutely. And Paul Skenes and Jared Jones and a really good Mitch Keller could be at the forefront of that rotation. And if I think Skenes is going to be as good as he's going to be, and Jared Jones keeps this up in a 7-game series, give me those two guys at the front of my rotation all the live long. And as long as they've got the offense to be able to back it up, the Pirates could hang with just about anybody. So again, where am I going with all this? I don't think it would be that big of a deal if Paul Skenes is not in Pittsburgh until the middle of June. As a fan and as a guy excited to see him just whiz 103 miles an hour by, Cody Bellinger of the Cubs, guys that have like given the Pirates fits for years and years. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal if he's not up by this weekend. A lot of people will be up in arms about it. I will not. I'd much rather see them call up a guy like Jake Lamb or Nick Gonzalez or G1 Bay, these guys that are hitting ridiculous 300 plus clips at AAA, because this offense is what needs help right now. Ron says he may sign a long contract early due to the PNC Park lease contract. Their payroll has to jump. You'd think. I thought that it would have jumped over $100 million by now. I thought that where we were going with the Pirates, I thought it would have been a situation where they kind of cemented themselves as a team that can contend if they can get the right guys in here. We saw that from 2013 to 2015. And I thought maybe that the payroll by now, 10 years later, would jump over $100 million. It hasn't. It might 10 years from now, but who's to say that 30 or 40 extra million dollars that they would have to add to their payroll goes to one guy? I don't think it would. You still got to pay O'Neal Cruz at some point. You'd want to pay O'Neal Cruz at some point. Jared Jones, maybe down the line. Off the top of my head, some other guys that might be worthy of Sawinski, maybe. I get your point, Ron, but I'm not sure that he'd be the kind of guy that would, get up here and sign a long contract early, because the guy could be making $45 million a year in 7-8 years. So with that, my point about Paul Skenes, to wrap it all up in a nutshell, I'm not going to be very upset that if he doesn't get brought up this weekend. But if I had to guess, he will be. And that'll be pretty darn cool. And that would make PNC Park one heck of a place to be on Saturday night. 6-0. The Angels lead it in the top of the 6th inning. The point I was going to make about the Pirates, and another reason why I would not be okay with Skenes not being up at this point, is because the starting pitching has actually not been what's needed to help for the Pirates so far. It's been the lineup and the lack of production. The last couple of games, 9 runs the last 2 games, they've been able to figure it out. But, I've seen guys like, Martin Perez, Keller threw a complete game last night. The starting pitching has been there. Quinn Priester's line, 3 earned runs and 4 2/3. It's not atrocious. I don't love 48 strikes on 74 pitches, though. That was something that he struggled with when he came up last year. And Quinn Priester, just the struggle and the command in that regard. Let's see what else they've got going on here. Ronzi Contreras, an inning and a third, 3 hits. I think that might be a lost cause for that guy to ever find himself back in the Pirates pitching rotation. So the Buccos on the season are a couple games below 500. They are, I just had their record up. It's like 17-19, I think. Yeah. 17-19. A team that is well above 500, 11 games above 500 is the Cleveland Guardians. And out here in the Ohio Valley, we've got our fair share of Bucco fans. I am one of them, but we also have a pretty decent sized Cleveland contingent. And you got to talk about them, because it's Stephen Vogt, first year manager. They are 11 games above 500, and they are starting to look like world beaters. And a lot of it has to do with really 2 guys. Jose Ramirez, 230 clips thus far this season. Not great, but he has 7 home runs, 28 RBI. The OBP is up near 300. And Stephen Kwan, like if the season ended today, the guy would be the American League MVP. He's hitting 353, OBP of 407. His OPS is near 1,000. I mean, they've got guys. Ramirez has got 7 home runs. Kwan's hitting 353. Andres Jimenez, former All-Star, hitting near 270. Josh Naylor, 275 with 8 home runs. They're hitting the cover off of the ball. And man, if they can figure out a little bit of the starting pitching, i.e., Tristan McKenzie, so far this season, the ERA up near 397, they can figure out the rotation. I like the team. I like that team a lot to compete in the American League. Two of their feature starters, the guys that have eaten their most innings so far this season in Logan Allen and Tanner Beebe. 5.11 ERA for Allen, Beebe with a 4.46 clip. That's got to come down for the guards, especially with a guy like Shane Bieber not seeing a whole lot of action and probably won't for some time. But in the bullpen too, I mean, Emmanuel Clase, 18 and a third, the ERA below 1. Nick Sandlin's having a good year out of the pen. Scott Barlow's having a good year out of the pen. Hunter Gaddis had a big strikeout yesterday to keep a run off the board against the Tigers. He's got an ERA below 3. They've got 4 or 5 relievers with an ERA below 3 that could be, I mean, just a litany, a combination, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. I mean, Clase is going to be your 9th inning guy this team starts to play in more pressing ball games down the line, I should say. But the starting pitching, it needs to be not addressed, but seriously taken into consideration. Like, we need to go out and maybe get an arm. Because last year, the Guardians, they sold at the deadline. This year, they're in a spot right now to be buyers, and they could go out and get a guy like Jose Quintana. If the Mets aren't contending, somebody like that. That's just a name to throw out there. So the Guardians 23-12. And if you remember the pilot, I think it was either the pilot or the second episode of Jacked Up, I talked about how much I liked Stephen Vogt as the pick for manager to replace Tito in Cleveland. I've always been under the impression that catchers are the most intelligent players on the field for your team. Excuse me. And a lot of times people say catchers are guys that are like second managers on the field as well. Vogt was a guy, I mean, he wasn't, a tremendous hitter in the big leagues, but he was well respected, a guy that was on a bunch of teams. And you might look at that and say, well, he couldn't find a home. Well, he played long enough in the major leagues. And even though that maybe one situation ended, it never got to the point until he was, old and didn't want to play anymore, that a team didn't want his services. I mean, there was always somebody there that could use a guy like that on their team. And lo and behold, he's got the Guardians 23-12 to start the season. Good point. Jason Kendall would have been an awesome Bucco manager. I mean, that was a guy that, in an era that wasn't very good for Pirates baseball, was known as a very, very good player and a top player across baseball. From the outside, you say, oh, the Pirates stink, but they got Jason Kendall. He's really good. And then Ron also says the hitting coach may be the one fired soon. I mean, if you're talking about Andy Haynes for the Pirates, if that anything comes down personnel change wise, he'll be the first one to go for sure. Again, if you guys have any comments at all, I mean, we're talking about baseball right now. The Pirates, when the heck is Paul Skenes going to be with the big club, the Guardians? If you got anything that you want to say, anything that comes into the world of sports right now, leave a comment and we'll talk about it. We're pretty much open up for discussion as we're on the stream here for another 25 minutes or so. Another thing that I wanted to talk about tonight too, as we shift into the National Football League a little bit. I mean, if you were with us for our live draft special a couple of weeks ago with Don Sloan, Bill Phillips, that was a lot of fun. The NFL really has just become a year-round spectacle. And I'm all for it. I've said that time and time again. Give me all the pageantry. Give me all of the extracurriculars that go with the NFL. One of which was the roast of Tom Brady live on Netflix this weekend. If you didn't catch that, go watch it because it was pretty darn good. I digress. So the NFL schedule release has kind of been up in limbo as far as what day it's going to be. I think we've got a pretty set date now of May 14th. And shout out to News 9 evening anchor Dylan Cleland for doing a little bit of investigating as I pull up his Twitter here. So he did some digging, and it actually got picked up by this account on X, NFL schedule update, 17,000 followers. So the Steelers are running a contest, a schedule release contest that ends May 14th at 3 a.m. Contest details. The Steelers Yins Chat 2024 regular season schedule release contest will begin on May 7th at 3 a.m. and end on May 14th at 3 a.m. The contest will require a participant to answer a predictive set of questions for the 7-day period prior to the release of the 2024 regular season schedule. Each correct answer, blah, blah, blah. So if it says prior to the release and May 14th, it's when it ends. That's pretty much set in stone. And I think that's been reported. Jordan, I see you say Schefter said May 15th. I think that's what it is now. Yep, May 15th, which is a Wednesday. We could speculate. I mean, let's look into some of the games that the Steelers are going to be playing this year. They're probably going to open up week 1 on the road, if I had to guess. Because they did at home last year, and the 11 or 12 years before that, they were week 1 on the road for a long time. So as we look at the schedule here, you've got your divisional opponents. Dallas comes to Acrisure Stadium. Kansas City comes to Acrisure Stadium. The LA Chargers and Jim Harbaugh will be playing inside Acrisure Stadium. And then they get both New York squads at home as well. The Jets and the Giants come to Pittsburgh as well. Now for the road games, besides Baltimore, Cincy, and Cleveland, the NFC East is the road or the division that the Steelers and the AFC North are playing. So you've got the Giants and the Cowboys at home. And then elsewhere in the NFC East, the Steelers go to DC to take on the Washington Commanders, and then they go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. There was a lot of speculation whether or not that was going to be the game in Brazil that was going to be played. It's not. I think as far as you see, when the Steelers play an international game, I think the first one in Ireland is going to have the Steelers written all over it. AFC wise, they've got the Las Vegas Raiders on the road. They go back to Indianapolis this season. And then the AFC West is the division that the AFC North goes up against as well. So you've got LA, the Chargers and the Chiefs at home, Raiders and Broncos on the road. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Broncos game will be in prime time because, unless he stinks real bad or gets hurt, Russell Wilson will be starting in that game. I'm going to go maybe like week 3 Sunday night is my pick for the Broncos Steelers game at Empower Field at Mile High. Week 3 or 4, early on enough in the season to where they were like, unless the dude gets hurt, he's not getting benched by this point. And that's a cool storyline with Russell Wilson coming back to Denver. And then the 17th game, an NFC opponent. It's out of the NFC South on the road, the Atlanta Falcons. So the Steelers have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 road games this year. 8 of them are at home. And this thing has the potential to be a gauntlet, depending on how it shakes out, because you throw Mahomes into that mix, you throw the Cowboys into that mix, who have been regular season warriors for however long. I think the Chargers have a chance to be pretty darn good at some point during the season. They need to go out and get a couple of more weapons. Aaron Rodgers, assuming comes back into the Jets fold, that makes them a little bit better. And of course, the AFC North can just be a bloodbath. So there has the potential here to be just an absolute. And then at Philly is going to be a terribly, terribly tough game. At Indianapolis, I don't necessarily think I would give the Steelers a good chance in right now because they never play really well there. And last year they laid an egg there. And Gardner Minshew was the quarterback for the Colts. Um, if they get Anthony Richardson healthy for a whole season, I think that guy's going to be spectacular and give the Steelers problems. So rumors, Ron, a couple of more comments. KC and Dallas, huge home games. Yeah, those will be fun to cover and for fans to go to for sure. Rumors on a huge wide receiver trade soon, been out there for a month that hasn't come about yet. I don't think it will. I don't think it will. If I was a betting man, I would bet that you will not see a Steeler be added, more specifically, a wide receiver get added to the roster until Latrobe. I don't think it's feasible at this point for the Steelers to go out and get a guy like Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or Justin Jefferson. Forget about it. If they would have made a trade for a big time wide receiver, they would have done it pre-draft and moved the capital. And now obviously they can't do it. And Roman Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round by the Steelers. They went out and signed Van Jefferson. They went out and signed Quez Watkins, 2 veteran-ish guys across the league that have played in some big moments and made some big catches in their career, guys that are very used to, playing in the NFL. They go out and do that. And then they draft Roman Wilson 84th overall or whatever it was. That right there should have been your tell that the Steelers were done unless they can make something work. Tyler Boyd signed with the Tennessee Titans today. I thought maybe that could have been a chance. That obviously that's not happening anymore either. And then, well, there was another one. There was rumors about Odell potentially too. He signed with the Dolphins. The options are thin as far as guys that are available right now. I think if anything were to happen for the Steelers wide receivers room at this very moment, or once we get to training camp, will be for when a guy gets potentially cut. Like when they signed Joe Hayden a couple of years ago in the middle of the preseason, the Browns cut him as he was a cap casualty. Then they brought him in for a 3-year deal. So I think that that'll be the only way. And there might be a guy or two, might be a guy that really fires all the Steelers fans up. Like, yes, go get him. So yeah. The wideout in San Fran was playing videos like he was coming to the Berg. If that was Ayuk, I think that was just kind of a troll job, Ron. Everybody on social media said that him and Mike Tomlin looked alike, and he acknowledged like Coach Tomlin on Twitter and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think the Steelers did their due diligence, and I think the Steelers tried their very hardest to go out and get a guy. It didn't work, and I don't think that San Francisco really wanted to part with a guy like Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, even though they went out and drafted a receiver in the 1st round again, because Brock Purdy. And while I think that he's become a pretty darn good player in the league, he needs that supporting cast. He needs everything that Brandon Ayuk gives them and everything that Deebo Samuel does and how those two complement each other and the offensive line that they're still continuing to build upon and George Kittle being one of the best tight ends in the game. They can't mess around with that too much because I think Brock Purdy is too delicate of a situation for them where he needs to have those weapons still in place. And that's probably why they couldn't get it done. There were a lot of reports that the asking price for Brandon Ayuk was a 1st round pick. It probably was. And that's probably why Brandon Ayuk isn't a Steeler right this very minute, because the Steelers were like, well, we can give you a 2nd, or we can do this. And the Niners were like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do it for this. And Omar Khan said, thanks, but no thanks. So again, the NFL schedule release the 15th of May, a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday. Might have to postpone next week's podcast to Thursday night so we can react to the schedule, or we could do it Wednesday night after the schedule release. We'll let you know. We'll let you know for sure. Couple hundred of you watching right now. We'll be on the digital platforms for the next 13 minutes. If you got anything else to say, if you have any questions about anything in the world of sports, I am here. Let me know. Let me know. Just scrolling on Twitter. I don't even know why I look at this stuff. This is another thing, too. We didn't get a chance, and we'll stay with the NFL. This is a good segue. So Najee Harris's fifth-year option was not picked up by the Steelers. It would have been for $6.7 million, and it would have been for next year. So this is and if you're unfamiliar with how it works, every player that's drafted for the most part and every rookie in the NFL gets brought to their team on a 4-year deal. First round picks get a 5th-year option. So in this window, in this time period right now, as players and all first round draft picks are heading into their 4th and final year of their rookie deal, teams have until, I think it was the 2nd of May, to pick up that 5th-year option. The Steelers had 2 guys that they could have because they traded for Justin Fields. The 5th-year option on Fields for the quarterback was some ridiculous number. They weren't going to do that. And then Najee Harris for $6.7 million, and his was declined. Personally, I would have picked it up. I don't think $6.7 million is necessarily a large amount of money. I think that they could have lived with that for 2025. But they decided to decline it. And I'm not necessarily agreeing with that decision, but I see where they're coming from. 1,035 rushing yards last season, 8 touchdowns. Was 7th in the league in yards and tied for 13th in touchdowns. He ran for 1,200 yards as a rookie, but the last 2 seasons barely over 1,000. Like, this was the first year that he averaged more than 4 yards a carry, 4.1. 1,035 yards a game is like 58 yards, or 1,035 yards a season is like 58 yards a game in a 17-game season. Let's stop acting like 1,000-yard rushing seasons or anything to write home about anymore. They're not. He's been productive, yes, but I think that you need to get more out of him, especially for being selected in the first round. And then you couple that with the fact that NFL running backs lately, and with the way that the game is going, they've been a dime a dozen. You go back and look at all of the 10 most recent leading rushers in Super Bowls. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round pick. Some of these guys have been undrafted. It's just one of those things where you can go out and get a guy and he can do exactly what Najee Harris did. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens made a living of it the last 2 years because J.K. Dobbins has been riddled with injuries. They've brought Gus Edwards back. He ran for over 4 yards a carry. Nick Chubb has that horrible injury against the Steelers on Monday Night Football. Jerome Ford, productive as heck. The list goes on and on. Jaylen Warren was an undrafted commodity, and he comes in here and he certainly showed that he's got more explosiveness to him than the guy that they took in the first round did. I'm not sure, Ron, what you mean by this. They're a little spoiled in that position. They need a power back. That's what Najee Harris is. I mean, gosh, Najee's 6'1", 242. If that doesn't scream power back, I don't know what does. He's got absolutely and shown almost nothing to the effect that he could have a second gear and turn on the Jets. Had it at Alabama. I don't know really what happened to him. The longest run of his career is 37 yards, and that was his rookie season. The longest rush he had last year was only 25 yards. No, he's not Jerome Bettis. There's never going to be another Jerome Bettis. The game has evolved from that. I'm trying to tell you that Najee Harris can win and can succeed in this offense. The position and the style of play that Najee Harris fits the bill of at the running back position, can do well under an Arthur Smith-led offense. Need I remind you that Derrick Henry ran for 2,000 yards with Arthur Smith calling the plays? So, with that being said, Najee Harris and what he can fit that, like he what am I trying to say here? Derrick Henry and Najee Harris are similar. I mean, in similar styles. Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. Najee Harris is Najee Harris. That doesn't need to be said. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can get somebody else like Najee that fits that bill, that fits that build that you didn't waste a first round pick on. And you go back and look at that draft, you pass on guys like Creed Humphrey at center. You pass on guys like Landon Dickerson in 2021 with Ben Roethlisberger fighting for dear life to be able to stay healthy to make it to the end of his career behind an offensive line that stunk. You needed to build it. And you draft, I can't even remember his name. Kendrick Green. Good Lord. Kendrick Green in the third round to play center. That'll go down as like a bar trivia question that will stump people 20, 30 years from now. Oh, yeah, Ben Roethlisberger and Marquise Pouncey had one heck of a relationship. They were together for a long time. Who was the center Ben's last year in Pittsburgh? Oh, what was that guy? Kendrick Green, that's right. I'm telling you, that's going to stump a lot of people down the road. So back to that point, like I thought the pick was a luxury at the time that they couldn't afford. And now, I mean, you look at what that was 3 years ago. 3 drafts later, they emphasized the offensive line in Fautanu and Zach Frazier. I think it's 3 years too late, but better late than never in that regard, I guess. So Najee Harris presumably won't be a Pittsburgh Steeler after this year. And if I had to make a bet on that, I would. I don't think they said to themselves, oh, well, we'll decline his 5th-year option to try and work something out with him. I think that possibility is still on the table. I just think it's hanging off the table by a thread. Like, I don't think it's like dead smack in the middle of the table to keep, drilling the metaphor at all, but I don't think it's really out of the question yet. It could be. I mean, Najee could be saying to himself and his agent, man, look, they didn't pick up my option. I'm done. So this is thrown out there. Would you agree with trading Najee to the Cowboys if the Steelers get CeeDee Lamb and a draft pick in return? I don't even know why I go on here sometimes. Every front office member, Jerry Jones down to like the janitor in the Cowboys facility, would deserve to get fired if they decided to part with CeeDee Lamb and a draft pick for Najee Harris. There were questions of maybe that the Cowboys could inquire about Najee because they have a drastic need at running back. But they're not. If the Steelers traded Najee Harris to the Cowboys, they would get a 2nd-round pick back at best. I would probably say a 3rd or lower. And then maybe like a couple more in the future. They're not getting CeeDee Lamb. They're not getting a top 5 receiver back for a guy that barely is able to rush for over 1,000 yards and has dealt with serious foot injuries as a running back. It ain't happening. 4 more minutes until we say goodbye. Ron, you've been a trooper, man. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I think the ownership finally loosened up, gave some power to the GM and the coach, and it showed in this draft. I think the drafts are always up to the GM and the coach. I just think that you're seeing the difference between a Kevin Colbert, draft and what Omar Khan has envisioned for this team. I think Kevin Colbert, towards the end of his tenure as the Steelers GM, was trying to keep up with the times a little bit and get offensive weapons. Ben was still in the stage in his career when Colbert was still making the picks that he was good enough to lift up some players around him. I mean, you look back at excuse me, what Eli Rogers and how productive he was as wide receiver too, behind Antonio Brown. I get that, but still, Ben still had that ability about him to go out and make players better around him. So if the skill department suffered a little bit, I don't think that it would have really mattered much if they were able to go out and build up the offensive line. I think Kevin Colbert was just trying to keep up with the times. The game was changing. Mahomes was emerging. All these, teams had multiple weapons, and the Steelers didn't. The Steelers were still on the heels of Antonio Brown departing. Juju was on his way out the door, and they needed to replenish that. They drafted Deontay Johnson in 2018. They drafted, or 2019, they drafted uh, Pat Freiermuth in the second round and Najee in the first round of 2021. You know, I know you could even make the argument that I don't think they should have drafted Freiermuth with some of the offensive linemen that they had available. And I'm not sure that guy stays with the Steelers long term. I hope he does. I love Pat Freiermuth, and I love what he's able to do in this offense, and I'm excited to see what he could do with Arthur Smith calling the plays. Arthur Smith's a tight end, by the way, at heart, if you didn't know that, and a tight end coach previously to becoming a coordinator. So I think there's some plans there for Freiermuth to be a focal point of this offense. I just don't know that it's feasible for them to be able to sign him to an extension because they're going to want to do business with Russell Wilson at the end of this season. I don't know that that's going to happen, but they've been open about the fact that they want to. They want this to be more than just a one-year thing. They're going to want to sign him to an extension. This defense is, over $100 million, $110 million, I think it is now, or it was going into last year, how much money is dispersed on the defensive side of the ball. And it went up even more. Actually, I'd have to get you the exact number now because Patrick Queen signed a pretty lucrative deal, and they brought in Deshaun Elliott on that side of the ball too. So I just don't know that it's very feasible, with all that being said, that Pat Freiermuth has a path to be a Steeler after this year. They got to get a deal done. I mean, he's in the last year of his contract because he wasn't a first round pick, so he doesn't have that fifth year option. That's what's going to stink in a couple of years about Joey Porter Jr. And I think that, that's with the way that they prioritized how much money they're spending on defense. When that time comes for him, that's not going to be an issue because I think he'll be extended and I think he'll be good for the Steelers for a long time. But every normal year, the 32nd overall pick is a first round pick, but it wasn't last year. It was the first pick in the second round. And because of that, Joey Porter Jr. will not be able to be granted a fifth year option despite him being selected with the 32nd overall pick because it was technically in the second round. Ron, one more comment before we go. I think there's a possibility that all four NFC North teams make the playoffs. I don't. I think you'll get three, and I'm not sure the Steelers will be one of them. We're going to talk a lot about that as OTAs and rookie minicamp open up this week and next week. And of course, as Steelers training camp rolls along at the end of July, that's going to be here before you know it. And then at that point, we'll be talking about football being on the horizon. So with that, we'll react to the NFL schedule release next week. Hopefully, by that point as well, we're talking about Paul Skenes pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I know all of you Pirates fans out there want that to happen. I'm just telling you that if it doesn't, don't be upset because I think this starting pitching for the most part has been good enough to be able to get it done. It's just been the offense, and I think they're still scoreless right now. The Pirates are scoreless. The Angels are not. It was 6-0. Last time I checked. Appreciate you guys for sticking around and watching. Ron, thanks for all the comments and engaging with me. I appreciate it as always. Again, next week we'll be in communication with you guys about what our plans are for the NFL schedule release. And also, too, I will tell you right now, for you Ohio Valley High School football fans, we are at we're about to cross the ribbon cross that finish line as far as our Thursday Night Lights and Friday Night Rivals live broadcast schedule being complete. I've seen it. It's awesome. And I think it's this close from being able to be released to the public. Once we get that green light, if you followed along with the NFL draft special that we did here on Jacked Up, we're going to do something very, very similar and release our complete live Thursday Night Lights and Friday Night Rivals broadcast schedule for this fall. I'm really, really excited for you guys to see it. We've got a ton of great matchups. Week 1, a very, very special week 1 for sure. And, rivalries that you've seen before on our airwaves that you'll see forever on our airwaves. New matchups. Without giving too much away, what can I say? Nothing. That's about it. So be on the lookout for that announcement as well. We'll be live on the air going game by game, hopefully talking to some area coaches that can be a part of the show as well. Really looking forward to that. So it is 9:02. It is time to say goodnight. Thanks for sticking with me for the last 45 minutes or so. We'll have some highlights tonight on News 9 at 10 on Fox 9 and News 9 tonight. Wheeling Central softball capturing the West Virginia Class A Region 1 Section 1 title. They win over Magnolia 10-2. I was there. That's why I was late getting back. That was why the stream tonight started at 8:15. So we'll have those highlights. We'll update you on the Pirates and stuff as well. And much more tonight in sports. 10:50 on Fox 9, 11:25 on WTOV 9. Good night. So long. We will talk to you next week. You've been watching Jacked Up. See ya.